Closed captioning for great tastes is presented by Manitoba Pork. Locally grown, globally preferred. Manitoba Liquor Mart presents Great Tastes of Manitoba. Great Tastes is brought to you by GreatTastesMB.ca. Great Tastes is sponsored by Manitoba Agriculture, Food and Rural Development.
And welcome to Great Tastes of Manitoba. My name is Des Daniels and very excited to be here at the Grant Park Liquor Mart Education Center. Today we are going to bowl you over with pork. Well, not me specifically, but more particularly we have Susan Reese from Manitoba Pork. Welcome. And of course Sheila Nash, product expert, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. So before we get to Sheila and we start talking about our beverage pairings, tell us a little bit about the recipes you're going to be making today so that she can figure out what she wants to do.
Sure, sounds good. So today we're going to make 3 quick and easy restaurant quality dishes that all lend themselves to be serving in bowls, which is great. We're going to start off with a creamy, flavorful pork and mushroom stroganoff. This one you can dress it up or dress it down depending on who you want to impress. So we'll go through that. For our second recipe, we've got a delicious pork kung pao with peppers and mushrooms.
Spicy.
And a little bit spicy, yes. And traditionally it's made with chicken and peanuts, but in our version we're using pork tenderloin, peppers, and cashews.
Awesome.
And then for our third and final recipe, we're going with a West African pork and peanut stew. This is a slow cooker recipe. It's to die for. It's aromatic old world spices in there, tons of flavor, and very satisfying.
Sounds super interesting. What do you think, Sheila? Any
Sounds
questions?
Like a great lineup. I am a little bit intrigued by that West African pork and peanut cashew stew. Lots of flavors.
Tons of flavor. Lots of different spices, some cumin, salt, curry powder, cayenne pepper, just to name a few, cinnamon, ground ginger.
Oh,
Can't go wrong
sounds
with
awesome.
This one.
Okay, all right.
Love
We'll
it.
find something to match up with this. I'll be back.
Good luck. Off you go.
Excellent.
All right. So recipe number 1, pork and mushroom stroganoff. So right off the bat, we want to talk a little bit about the pork, because I have to be honest, when I go shopping, and even if the recipe calls for a particular thing in terms of pork cuts, I just usually go with a chop, because that's what I know what to do. I do to cut around the bone. But we don't want to do that here. We got something very specific we want to use for the stroganoff today.
Sure, so we've decided to go with a boneless pork loin chop. Very lean, easy to fast fry, which is what we're going to do with the strips. We're going to cut the strips ourselves so they're all nice and even. They'll all cook evenly, and you don't have to cook pork loin to well done either. So this is a perfect cut for our stroganoff.
Okay.
So just to show how to do that, we're going to take our pork chop and basically cut against the grain on a long strip.
So why
like
do we
so.
want to do against the grain? Because I've heard that talked about. What's the reason for that?
So ideally we want to keep our meat fibers short. So by cutting against the grain, that's what we're doing, and that will keep the pork from being tough when you're actually cooking it.
Okay, and when you were talking about cooking, you said you don't have to cook it to well done. Again, this is one of my issues. I cook the heck out of everything, not just pork, everything. And we don't need to do that, right?
Not with pork loin cuts.
Okay.
So they're meant to be cooked to a hint of pink.
Okay.
That's what we want. And
Anytime I see pink, I panic because I gotta
don't
cook
panic.
it more.
Don't
so,
panic.
Okay, I won't panic. You're here. So
otherwise the pork is just overcooked and it's tough. So,
Okay.
so essentially this is what we're doing, cutting about 1/4 inch wide strips, and then we're just going to quickly stir fry them in some canola oil, and then move on to the rest of the dish.
Okay, so I know that
maybe
you
I'll
can
hand
also
that
do
over
the
to you.
pre-cut strips. Is that something that we could use for this recipe as well, or not so much?
Sure, you can buy pork strips already cut up for you in the store. Sometimes they use them from the legs, sometimes maybe even the shoulder. It just sort of depends on what they have available.
Okay.
You don't always know that the strips are from the loin. So to be sure and to keep the dish lean, we've decided to buy pork loins.
Stick with the
chops.
loin.
Exactly,
Okay.
and just cut the strips ourselves. So.
Awesome. Okay, well let's put this together because this is you've got a lot of interesting looking spices,
Sure.
etc. Well, first of all, mushrooms. Like
Okay.
again, the amount or the number, sheer, different number of mushrooms that you produce locally is quite astounding.
Yep.
So what do we have here today?
So we've used a medley of exotic mushrooms, just again to elevate the dish a little bit. There's a combination of shiitakes, cremini mushrooms, white button mushrooms, portobellas, and oysters in there.
Okay.
If you want to not go to the expense of getting a variety of mushrooms, just stick with your regular white button mushrooms
Can't
or
go
your
wrong.
creminis. You can't go wrong.
Okay, awesome.
Just adding the different flavors of mushrooms just adds to the dish.
And we've got some peak of the market onions in here as well.
Yes, so
Okay.
we've basically put some butter in the pan, and then the same pan that we use for stir frying the strips. And we've sauteed our mushrooms with some peak of the market onion and some garlic. And
Got it all in
basically
there.
until it cooks down.
Yep.
We then coated that mixture of vegetables with a tablespoon of flour.
Okay.
And added in some beef broth, and then allowed that to thicken.
So we're gonna put some other stuff in here. Of course, we gotta
Right.
get our pork in here, and a little bit of ketchup.
Yep, we're gonna just add some ketchup.
What is it about ketchup?
I don't know.
So good.
And some mustard, Dijon
right.
mustard, actually.
Yeah.
A little bit of Worcestershire sauce. I can
Worcestershire-
never say that properly.
Worcestershire.
And we're going to add in some paprika.
Okay, great. And now I'm always a little concerned about the curdling with the sour cream. So how do we make sure that we don't do that?
Well, before we add the sour cream, we're actually going to add our pork strips back in
Okay.
just to heat them through. So
Right.
again, we didn't cook these all the way through at the very beginning. You don't need to.
Okay.
You just want to brown them up quickly and then set them aside.
Right.
So you keep mixing that. Once the mixture is heated through after a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to add in our sour cream.
Okay.
And the reason that we do it at the end is we don't want the sour cream to curdle.
Okay,
So
so
we
at the
want to
end.
make sure that any boiling of ingredients that we've done to reheat has all been done before we add in the sour cream.
Okay, so towards the end and less heat, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you mix that all together, you end up getting a really nice, creamy, velvety sauce. We're going to garnish with some parsley when we're done.
Okay.
And you can serve it over hot cooked noodles or rice.
All kinds of stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Smells great. And when we come back, we're going to bring the heat. We've got pork kung pao with peppers and cashews. Awesome. Here on Great Tastes of Manitoba.
You're watching Great Tastes of Manitoba, brought to you in part by GreatTastesMB.ca.